At this final hour, in this quiet place, Harlem has come to bid farewell to one of its brightest hopes, extinguished now and gone from us forever. It is not in the memory of man that this beleaguered, unfortunate, but nonetheless proud community has found a braver, more gallant young champion than this Afro-American who lies before us, unconquered still. I say the word again as he would want me to, Afro-American. Afro-American Malcolm. Malcolm had stopped being Negro years ago. It had become too small, too puny, too weak a word for him. Malcolm was bigger than that. Malcolm had become an Afro-American, and he wanted so desperately that all his people would become Afro-Americans too. There are those who still consider it their duty as friends of the Negro people to tell us to revile him, to flee even from the presence of his memory, to save ourselves by writing him out of the history of our turbulent times. And we will smile. They will say that he is of hate, a fanatic, a racist, who can only bring evil to the cause for which you struggle. And we will answer and say unto them, did you ever talk to Brother Malcolm? Did you ever touch him or have him smile at you? Did you ever really listen to him?
You haven't done the right thing.
Was he ever himself associated with violence or any public disturbance? For if you did, you would know him. And if you knew him, you would know why we must honor him. Malcolm was our manhood, our living Black manhood. This was his meaning to his people, and in honoring him, we honor the best in ourselves. However much we may have differed with him or with each other about him and his value as a man, let his going from us serve only to bring us together now. Consigning these mortal remains to earth, the common mother of all, secure in the knowledge that what we place in the ground is no more now a man, but a seed, which after the winter of our discontent will come forth again to meet us, and we shall know him then for what he was and is, a prince, our own Black shining prince, who didn't hesitate to die because he loved us so.
And so today, May 19th, we celebrate Malcolm X's birthday because he was a great, great Afro-American. And Malcolm X is you, all of you. And you are Malcolm X.
I'm 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 Malcolm X. I am Malcolm X.
I am Malcolm X. I am Malcolm X.
I am Malcolm X.
I am Malcolm X.
As Brother Malcolm said, we declare our right on this earth to be a man, to be a human being, to be given the rights of a human being, to be respected as a human being in this society, on this earth, in this day, which we intend to bring into existence.
By any means necessary.
Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. First and foremost, I would be remiss in my duty if I did not start off by saying Happy Malcolm X Day, family. Happy Malcolm X Day. Today is May 19th, 2024. And as we know, if Malcolm had not been taken from us, in February 1965. He would have been 99 years old today. So happy Malcolm X Day, family. You're watching once again a dual stream with Bequaline Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire, and of course Lumumba Speaks, a Black Empowerment Initiative where we believe we can gain competitive advantage by always betting on Black. If you have not done so already, make sure you hit the subscribe and the like button, as well as the notification bell for future videos. You're watching once again a dual stream of Lumumba Speaks, the Black Empowerment Initiative, where we believe we can gain a competitive advantage while always betting on Black, and of course Bequaline Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire. We have a great show this afternoon where we're going to be discussing why we must protect the legacy of Malcolm X. Keyword, why we must protect the legacy of Malcolm X. Put a 1 in the chat if you agree that we should protect the legacy of Malcolm X. Put a 2 in the chat if you believe it's not an issue or issue of concern for the global African community. So once again, family, if you're watching, put a 1 in the chat if you believe that this is not, that we should protect the legacy of one Malcolm X, also known as Hajj Malik El Shabazz, and put a 2 in the chat if you believe that this is not an issue of concern. I see Sister Sada puts a 1, Chris C puts a 1 in. So I think we're going to have a great conversation this evening. The link, of course, family, is in the description. And then, of course, we're going to put the link in the chat momentarily after I say my 2 cents, right? But definitely want to thank you all for being with us here on this Sunday afternoon, May 19th, family, May 19th, 2024, the 99th birthday of one Hajj Malik El Shabazz. Democrats are the fox, absolutely. Republicans are the wolf, absolutely, Brother Chris. And we're going to be discussing why we must protect the legacy of one Malcolm X. Make sure Snapshot Reviews has finally caught a live. Appreciate that. I know you're calling in, I believe, from the UK. So definitely want you to tap in, be part of the conversation. A brother from Jolly, across the pond, as they say, right? From across the pond. So definitely want to give a shout out to Snapshot Reviews. I think it's going to be a great conversation that we're going to have this evening. But make sure, family, that you hit the subscribe and the like buttons. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Let's make sure that we break that algorithm. And of course, last but not least, make sure that you hit that notification bell so that you are updated and notified of future videos and programming here at Lumumba Speaks and Bequaline Network. Once again, this is a dual stream with the 2 programs. And also, family, before we get started, just want to go over some of the ground rules here at Lumumba Speaks and Bequaline Network. First and foremost, diversity of thought is welcome. Diversity of thought is welcome. So irrespective if you're on the left, you're on the right, or you're right down the middle, you can be part of the conversation here. Number 2, no epithets of any kind, particularly no racial epithets of any kind, no gender epithets of any kind, no homophobic statements, so on and so forth. We want to make sure that this is a space of Black empowerment. And so we believe in the 3 N's of Black power: self-respect, self-respect, self-defense, and of course, self-determination. So make sure no epithets of any kind are allowed on this platform at any time for any reason. Number 3, facts over feelings. So we're going to have a great conversation. We'll make sure that we have an intellectual debate. We encourage that you address the information that we're going to provide from an intellectual space rather than a emotional space. Family, I'll say Black power. Then, of course, last but not least, no fundamentally false statements. You can provide your opinion, right, or perspective, but no fundamentally false statements. The example I give of this, of course, I've done so ad nauseum at the show, is that you could believe, you can be of the ilk, of the belief, of the mindset that LeBron James is the greatest basketball player of all time. However, you would say that Michael Jordan only won 2 championships. That is completely false. That is hyperbole, right? That is misinformation. And so we don't allow fundamentally false statements on my platform. As you all know, this is my platform, and I'm responsible for the information that is disseminated on my platform. So want to make sure we cover that. And of course, our mission here is neither to exonerate or vilify, but to challenge conventional wisdom and re-examine what has previously been accepted as fact. So family, I'm going to put the link in the chat, and we're going to get the conversation started after I give my soliloquy. And then we're going to get the ball rolling here. But when we talk about why we must protect the legacy of Malcolm X, first and foremost, for those of you who do not know it, although I believe you all do know, Malcolm X, born Malcolm Little at University Hospital in Omaha, Nebraska, May 19th, 1925, to, of course, Earl and Louise Little, who lived at 3448 Pinckney Street in Omaha, Nebraska. Malcolm X, as we all know, also later known as Hajj Malik El Shabazz, was an American Muslim minister, human rights activist. He was the prominent figure during the civil rights and Black Power movement. He was at one point the spokesperson of the Nation of Islam until 1964 and the chairperson for the Organization of African American Unity until his assassination in February of 1965. Many of you may be unaware, but I'm quite sure, I'm preaching to the choir here, that when Malcolm's several sojourns to the African continent, one of those sojourns, he actually spoke at the University of Ibadan, and the Nigerian Muslim Student Association bestowed him with the honorary Yoruba name, Omawale, the son who has come home. And Malcolm stated that this was his most treasured honor, to be called Omawale, the son who has come home. So definitely want to make sure that we honor the life and legacy of Malcolm X. And of course, we can't mention Malcolm X without mentioning what Betty Shabazz, right? So we definitely want to give our due blessings and love and honor to the Queen Mother, his wife, and of course, widow, Betty Shabazz, and of course, their beautiful children, who of course are older than me. So we definitely want to show them respect as well, particularly the oldest daughter, who has made sure that she sought to protect his legacy, and of course, the rest of his daughters as well. So definitely want to make sure that we give due respect to the family. So first and foremost, family, in terms of why we must protect the legacy of Malcolm X, I think number one, the dominant society tries to convey a message that Malcolm was simply a rabble rouser. He was a demagogue. He had no real plan, but simply to play on people's anger and frustration, right? The movie Selma actually substantiates this claim that I'm making. I think there was a scene in the movie where he said, I don't really have a plan. I'm just trying to, rouse people up. Completely false. Some even argue that was the case in Spike Lee's movie, his biopic by Spike Lee, right? This, of course, is an ahistorical narrative, as Malcolm was an incredible organizer and leader during his time in Hawaii, in which he established dozens of temples, later known as mosques, leading him to later become the Northeast regional organizer and later national representative of the Nation of Islam. He also was the founder and creator of the Nation of Islam's literary organ, Muhammad Speaks, now known as the Final Call, right? Also, Malcolm was responsible for the training, not only of the MGT, the Muslim Girls Training, but also the men in the Nation of Islam, known as the Fruit of Islam, known as the FOI. Extremely strict. We're not going to get into a lot of disciplinary methods, but Malcolm was responsible for that. Even during his time in the Organization of African American Unity, Malcolm created the charter with Dr. John Henry Clark and Sister Lynn Shiflett. Also created the literary organ in the OAAU, known as the Black Lash, right? Many people may be unaware of that. They even created a liberation school, a Pan-African school that had classes for not only young people, but also adults on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Part of the curriculum consisted of African American history, political education, and consumer information and skills. So once again, this pushes back against the narrative, the belief that the dominant society seeks to promote, that Malcolm had no true goal or plan or message, but it was simply to tap into people's anger and frustration, right? So that pushes back on that. Also, even in the academy, right? Liberals, leftists argue that Malcolm changed his political views after leaving the Nation of Islam, arguing that he turned away from Black nationalist politics and moved in the direction of Martin Luther King and the politics of integration and reconciliation. Now, this is what I would argue is a half-truth. Malcolm did change his political views after he left the nation. Malcolm went from being a dogmatic Black nationalist to a pragmatic Pan-Africanist, right? But he did not turn to the politics of integrationism, and of course, reconciliation. So once again, these are an example of some of the master narratives and false information that's promoted about Malcolm X. So just something to be cognizant of. Even Malcolm was even seen as an international leader after he left the Nation of Islam. A great example was when Malcolm traveled to that continent and received the backing of the Organization of African Unity, now known as the African Union. This was about maybe 13, 14 months after the Organization of African Unity had been created, had formed, in which they drafted a resolution in July of '64 to intensify efforts to ensure the total elimination of all forms of discrimination based on race, color, ethnic origin in the United States against, of course, African Americans. Malcolm accepted his resolution, was satisfied with the resolution, and afterwards, several African nations, particularly members of the Casablanca group. Many of you may be unaware of the Casablanca group, but that's a whole show we could do on the history of the formation of the Organization of African Unity, now known as the African Union. But the Casablanca group consisted of Algeria, Egypt, Ghana, Guinea, Libya, Mali, and Morocco that promised to officially support Malcolm in his move to legalize the fight of African Americans against the United States at the United Nations next session, right? Also, because Malcolm X was the chairperson of the Organization of African American Unity, Malcolm was given diplomatic treatment by the Organization of African Unity. So we see that Malcolm was treated as a foreign diplomat. He was actually thoroughly respected by the international African community. Boss player MFS says, "Happy born day to the great ancestor, to the most honorable Hajj Malik El Shabazz, to brother minister Malcolm X by any means necessary." The racist New York Times call him the apostle of hate. Absolutely. The beginning of the movie, Malcolm X was filmed 2 blocks from my house in Bushwick, Brooklyn, under the L train. Shout out to the NYC, absolutely. So we greatly appreciate that. The link is in the chat, family. So if you want to tap in before the conversation finish, want to make sure that you always get a chance to do that. And then, of course, even the Nation of Islam, right? Called Malcolm a hypocrite. They stated that he was trying to rejoin the nation before he was assassinated. They argued that he caused his own assassination. Right? These, of course, arguments or these positions are vehemently false. We know Malcolm was not seeking to rejoin the Nation of Islam. He had created his own Islamic organization, Muslim Mosque Inc., and had created his own non-religious human rights organization, Pan-African organization, the Organization of African American Unity. In fact, he was actually assassinated at a rally for his Organization of African American Unity, a rally for the Organization of African American Unity. Also, we know that these beliefs, there was a belief that Malcolm wanted to take over the nation due to Malcolm taking issue with the Nation of Islam's philosophy of non-political engagement. And he began to question the merits of Elijah Muhammad's teachings after a shooting of several members of the nation at the Los Angeles Mosque in, I believe, 1962, 1963. And he also took umbrage with Elijah Muhammad using the wealth of the nation to enrich family members and not build an independent nation as was promised. And so, of course, the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover's COINTELPRO used that to their advantage to, of course, create a divide between Elijah Muhammad and, of course, Malcolm X, which led to Malcolm X leaving the Nation of Islam for a multitude of reasons, also a lack of independent thought in creating his own organization. So those are some of the key points I want to make in terms of why we need to, of course, protect the legacy of Malcolm X from external forces and internal forces in our community who seek to, of course, create a narrative about Malcolm for their own personal and selfish reasons. So, family, the link, I'm going to put the link in the chat once again. If you're watching, make sure you hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, and be part of the conversation. So, snapshot reviews. What's going on, brother?
Hey, how you doing? You all right?
I'm doing quite all right. How are you?
Fine, thanks. How's your dissertation going?
Well, actually, it's going pretty good. I actually have appreciate you asking, first and foremost. I have about 15 pages left.
Oh,
I have about 1 page left to write on chapter 5, which is the findings. And of course, hold on real quick. I can bring this up right now. I got it on my computer. Yeah, so chapter 5 is findings and yeah, chapter 5 is like 40 pages.
Yeah, I recently done one not too long ago, innit? So I know what you're going through, man.
Yeah, so you know what that's about.
Yeah, it's just so much reading before you even get started.
Yeah. So findings and analysis. I have about 40 pages for chapter 5. I got like 1 page left to write there. And of course, chapter 4, I probably got about, because I'm focusing on the site, want to give some of the history and background of the Black Culture Center at Cleveland State University. So I got probably about 5-10 pages left there, and then chapter 6. Cool. So I plan to, if things go the way I want them to go, to be able to turn my dissertation into my advisor and the committee chair by Wednesday.
Yeah.
Have him review, give me feedback, make whatever corrections he wants, and then we can send that out to my committee and then schedule my defense. So yeah, we're definitely tracking, and definitely appreciate you asking that question very quickly. P-Funk 100 says, can always count on you to bring integrity. Much appreciated, Lumumba. I appreciate that, P-Funk 100. And tap in and be part of the conversation as we're celebrating Malcolm X, Golf Group's 99th birthday. And of course, we're discussing why we must protect the legacy of Malcolm X. Go ahead, snapshot reviews.
Yeah, so it's funny, actually, and I didn't even plan it to be like this, but this week I just finished reading the autobiography of Malcolm X for the first time.
I say Black Power.
And I will say that is a book that every black man needs to read.
I would even argue person. I would say person.
Yeah, even
women,
person.
Child,
Yeah. Absolutely. Like just the transformation he goes through when he says, he says my primary school was where he grew up when he was little. His college was in the streets of Harlem. His master's was when he was in prison and all of that. And it just, you can see the whole transformation of him and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
And there is just one thing that I just really want to highlight to everyone, especially like to your American audience as well, because, like there's a lots of these like groups that try to like want to like separate from Africa or really don't want to have that connection. And there's a bit in the book where he's actually in Africa. He's actually in Ghana, I think.
Well, what page is that?
This is page 469.
Okay, I could pull it up because I have the copy right here.
And he just says, I can only wish that every American black man could have shared my ears, my eyes, and my emotions throughout the whirlwind of engagements that I went through, and the hospitality that they pointed out to him, and just to know that they love you guys. You know what I mean? They see you as part of the family and things like that. And I just like want to help spread at least that little message, because I think we all are like one family, and we do kind of need to think about how we connect and stuff. But there's just loads of, there's so much things in the book, like it's really hard to just pick out one real like, and stuff. But like, yeah, he's just an inspiring individual. Like, to me, he's like, if I hold up two black people that I see as like really at the echelon to like black thought and black power and unity, and that it's Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey for me.
Okay.
But yeah, it's just a really good book. He starts to talk about Pan-Africanism a lot more after his pilgrimage to Mecca, and when he goes to Africa and he starts to see some of the political discussions that are going there, because he says that he stopped talking about religion and started to lean more into like the social and the politics and things like that, which is something that we should all kind of be aware of and things like that. But I think now it's coming to the time where we just need to start thinking about like what our game plan is here to kind of turn around this situation. I mean, I understand that everyone's at different levels of their understanding in terms of where we are, but we need to start thinking about something concrete that we can start to do in our own parts of the globe, wherever we are, and just start to think about how we can sort of tie that in. And I think that kind of conversation would make him proud.
Yeah, I would agree with you there, because Malcolm always taught us to not be so hard on individuals who don't know, right? Who aren't in the know. But I think you bring up some great points in terms of Malcolm's maturation. There are several scholars who actually use Malcolm as a template when they talk about Nigrescence theory, or this concept of becoming black or developing a black identity. But I think you made a great point in terms of focusing on Malcolm's shift from being a dogmatic. Rich, the African elder, you definitely, we need you to tap in, brother. Baba, we need you to tap in and be part of the conversation. The link is in the chat. From going from being a dogmatic religious nationalist to a pragmatic Pan-Africanist. And I would argue that's when he truly was able to start getting things done, not only just locally, but also internationally as well. Yeah,
absolutely. I think, though, like, obviously the circumstances of his split from the nation, is what it is. I think his mind became a lot freer when he stopped idolizing and worshiping another man. Like, you know what I mean? It's one of those things, like, you can respect another man, you can even go so far as to revere them, but only if I think you witness them firsthand doing something incredible, achieving some feat, and only then that reverement should only last as long as that moment. When you start idealizing people where you think they're like this outer world saint godly thing, as we know, like throughout history, that always doesn't go well, you know. But once he started thinking about who he was and understanding that, you know what, it don't matter if you're Christian, Muslim, Hebrew, whatever, you're catching hell because you're black. So like, let's try and work on that first and put everything else to the side. And I think if most people could get to that level of kind of understanding, I think we'd move forward a lot quicker.
Absolutely. Rich the African Elder, he says he's at work, but he's going to try to tap in. Definitely hope you can. He loves Omawale Malcolm X. And I agree with you there, Butter Snapshot Reviews as well. They definitely want to give a shout out to the UK. I would presume you're in London or the London.
Just outside London.
Okay, very good, very good. Hey, and your boy Tyson Fury got that ass tap last night.
Oh yeah. I watched that live as well, man.
Yeah. He ran out of gas, but we're gonna stay focused here.
He's too much, man.
Yeah, Mr. Sandman. But you've been waiting patiently. I'm gonna allow you to tap in. This is Sandman coming out of the elevator. 215. What's going on?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Am I clear today?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's what's up. Yeah, just thinking about this Malcolm X Day and the relationship of the civil rights activists from the yesteryear and Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, and how Martin Luther King seemed to be much more accepted by the United States of America as a civil rights activist as opposed to Malcolm X. And I know Malcolm X was respected, and for his intelligence and his views in regards to some of the stuff that he talked about. But it seemed to me like what kind of dawned to me as I was just listening to, you're talking about Malcolm X and Malcolm X and the Malcolm X Day, is how much do you think this accepting of Martin Luther King as opposed to Malcolm X has something to do with regards to the United States being a Christian country? Because the Pilgrims, they were Protestant Christians, and Malcolm X being or deriving his ideology from being a Muslim as opposed to a Christian.
Well, yeah, so I think there's a couple things there. One, I would argue that later in life, when Malcolm became politically mature, he ceased to derive his ideology rooted in Islam. But I would argue that part of the reason why Malcolm is not accepted isn't simply because of his religious beliefs, which I do believe that there's a position there. I would agree with you that is part of the issue, but also because he was not an integrationist and he did not articulate a black activist paradigm that was easy for whites and the power structure to digest.
Yeah,
so it's very difficult to. Oh, I'm sorry. Go right ahead, brother.
Oh, you could go ahead. I thought you were done.
Yeah. So I think that's part of the issue, but I would agree. For example, growing up, I grew up in church, unfortunately, and I could recall that even in church, they never wanted to mention Malcolm X because he was a Muslim. So they would always focus on Dr. King because he was a Christian. So even in the black community, we see that. And as a result, I would argue that what the black community is doing in terms of revering Dr. King and, of course, distancing themselves from Malcolm X is a due product, an example, as it derives from what the dominant culture does as well.
It just seemed to me that his Malcolm X, his rhetoric and his ideology in regards to relationships in between, African Americans and the European seemed like it kind of in line with the ideology of Islam, more so that Jesus Christ in the parables of the Bible, Jesus Christ was more of a forgiving leader or a believer in God, whereas though Muhammad was more of a eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, and more of a vengeful leader. So
well, we find that in the Bible as well. It just most people choose not to focus on it in the Gospels, but Jesus says the same thing in the Gospels as well. It's just not Yeah, it's just part of the master narrative where it's not focused on or highlighted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't noticed that, but it just seemed like, the ideology, from what I understand, or the way that it's interpreted by European culture, is that Jesus was more of a forgiving
Right.
deity, and Malcolm X wasn't with the integration, being that because he wanted to I don't know, get vengeance for the wrongs that were done against African Americans, or not necessarily get vengeance, or at least get their own the right to be a human, to be a human being, and do for self, as opposed to integrating with someone that he believed was oppressive to his people. So he didn't really have a trust in the European power structure in the United States, because he just didn't trust them, because of the past wrongs that were done to African Americans in the United States, as opposed to Martin Luther King, rather. The Reverend Martin Luther King believed more in forgiving the past wrongs of the European, and accepting the wrong that both the black and the white people did in this country, and moving forward. So I believe that's why it's more accepted.
What is the wrong that we did in this country? That's something I'm going to ask.
I don't really know. No human being is perfect. So I don't know how you can judge what is more wrong or more right based on a moral code. I guess that's up to a personal interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
Right. P-Funk 100 says, of course, a European is going to push forgiveness, doesn't want us getting any get back. Well, that's true. Typically people who are harming you aren't going to teach you to actually defend yourselves, protect yourselves, and hold them accountable for what they've done. So, that's kind of, I would even argue, non-blacks promoting their own self-interest above what is in the best interest of us as a people. So definitely something to consider there. So now I'm gonna put this question out to the family. Why must we protect the legacy of Malcolm X? Why is that needed and necessary? Anyone? Why is that needed and necessary? Snapshot reviews, go right ahead.
Yeah, I think I just think, and especially just having finished reading the book, it's just a refreshing image of just seeing a black guy standing tall with his spine intact, being able to say what's on his mind unapologetically, but also come at it with the intelligence needed to actually have a constructive conversation and not delve into like emotion or anything like that. He's very much aware of who he is, where he's come from, and the policy of just truth talking. That's what I think was the thing, is he was like, I'm not here to, one of the things he says, I'm not here to condemn America, but if the truth condemns America, then she stands condemned. Like, it's like just being able to like have that thing, because a lot of black guys, especially young black guys, and I see it over here as well, like it's almost like we gotta feel like we're pushed into some sort of role where we're not able to like really speak our minds, or like the women are spoken to first before the guys are spoken to about things that matter and stuff like that. And it's refreshing to see someone like him, just a strong, intelligent black guy on the front line, just being able to be truthful and speak with conviction. And like, you couldn't really back the guy into any kind of contradiction, you know what I mean? But if you saw some sort of social activist of today, they're all over the flipping place, you know what I mean? Like, you can't get anything coherent out of them. They'll backtrack pedal, they'll get caught up in this modern day term of woke and all that kind of stuff. But you couldn't put Malcolm X in that category, because what he believed in and what he stood for was genuine and powerful, you know what I mean? And I think it's good for young black guys to actually really see more black male figures like that. I think.
I would agree 100%. Very quickly, LMA, you're in queue. I need you to cam up in queue just to make sure you're not trolling. Then I will bring you into the live. So LMA, if you could cam up in queue, make sure you're not trolling. Then I will bring you into the live. My apologies. Snapshot reviews, go right ahead.
Oh no, I was finished pretty much. I think like just the image and the message and even like some of the speeches, man. Like you can just gain so much wisdom, not just on the race thing, but just on life and like how you like navigate it and things like that. He said something about like on one of his trips when he got back from Mecca, he went to Lebanon and he noticed that the Arab French women there, he goes, you can tell like a country's moral strength or weakness by the street attire of its women. If the women are walking around like, you know, with their backs hanging out and this, that, the other, you know what the moral kind of quality is of that culture or of that kind of society. And it's things like that that's still relevant today. You can see where some people just, you think, how the hell you come out of the house like that? Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
right.
But if the women are carrying on like that, it shows that the men aren't doing anything to not sound sexist or to put them in line, but they're not really providing that structure for them to be able to walk with dignity and pride in themselves, you know?
No, I think that's a good point. You know, I was fortunate enough to grow up in a two-parent household. My parents are still married to this day for 47 years. And I can recall, so I'm the baby in my family. My sister is the oldest, that my dad did not allow my sister to dress in a provocative manner, period. Like, I remember she probably left the house when she was, 22-ish or something like that. But I remember she was not allowed to dress in a provocative manner. And even when she came around, even after she moved out, she knew to dress in a manner that was becoming. And that's something that stuck with her for the rest of her life, I would argue.
Yeah. And when you do see, you know, young women who are growing up in a single household with just the mum, like being the only one around, the mums tend to let a lot of things slide, like especially with the girls and that. So yeah, I can totally understand that perspective.
Absolutely. LMA, what's the word?
Hey, what's going on, Lamumba? Happy X Day, man. How are you?
I'm doing quite all right, brother. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, no problem, man. But I, just dropped in, heard your question of why we need to protect, Malcolm X's legacy. And, I may not be as well read as you guys, but, the one thing I think about is like what they did to Martin Luther King, right? If in the last, probably the last 10 years, you can boil down all of Martin Luther King's, achievements and his motivations to that one part of that one speech, not the color of your skin, but the content of your character. Right. And so I think that, I forgot the gentleman, but what the gentleman said, but, this country focused mostly on Martin Luther King, and I have nothing against him, but I'm just saying that they focus on him because of that forgiveness aspect, because of that, him sharing the same Christian values, that you don't want to hear other voices. So it's kind of like you ignore them, but I don't want it to come to the point where, now they start trying to co-opt Malcolm X and saying that, oh, he really wasn't, he was talking about something else. He wasn't talking about white supremacy, or he was, there was one thing they're trying to float around that he may have been gay or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Trying to like co-opt them and then change the.
And if I could, brother, I'm glad you brought that up, because I figured this was something that would be brought to the conversation.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that he is or he isn't. I'm just saying that's what
I just wanted to kind of touch base on this to where the individuals who made the claim that Malcolm was engaged in homosexual relations were members of the Nation of Islam, who made these accusations and made these accusations to Manny Marable. I actually have the book here, Manny Marable's book. He's actually from my hometown, Dayton, Ohio. And so one of the sisters, who's a queen to me, she's a big sister of mine, got about maybe about 10, 12 years on me. She actually was a graduate student at Columbia University in the African American Studies program, where Manny Marable was the department chair. And she was working on a book project with Manny Marable. And she said, first off, we can't write this in this book because, one, these claims are unsubstantiated. It's from a legal standpoint, it's slander. And we have to consider the source of who's making these claims, right? And Manny Marable, he could put it in the book anyway, and she refused to then sign off and said, I want to be taken off the book project. So once again, also when people make an accusation, you have to look at, of course, the credibility of the individuals who are making those claims. But I just wanted to bring that up. But go right ahead, LMA.
Exactly, and that's the point. So even if that if it's not true, the source is fraudulent. We have elements in this country that will easily latch onto that and then try to curve Malcolm X's, because he's not here to defend himself. So they'll easily use that to curve his whole legacy into something that benefits them. You know what I'm saying?
I'm glad you brought that up, because this is something that typically happens when I'm teaching. I always tell my students there's a thing called the master narrative, right? And typically the master narrative seeks to create a race-neutral, loving, forgiving perspective of Black leaders. A good example would be Dr. King. You kind of mentioned that, Brother LMA. Even Muhammad Ali. Once he's transitioned, or when Muhammad Ali was in a position in the 90s where he couldn't speak for himself, then the power structure comes in and begins to speak for him and say, okay, this is what he actually was about and what he was fighting for. They tend to co-opt and rebrand, of course, the arguments of our leaders. And so that's something that we need to be cognizant of. And this typically takes place after, keyword is after they've transitioned or they're in a position where they aren't able to speak for themselves anymore.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I think that's why, it's almost kind of like Juneteenth in a sense, like Juneteenth or Kwanzaa, right? Like when it was something that we, that we celebrated for ourselves, it was more pure. And then all of a sudden, now you see Nancy Pelosi with the kente cloth taking a knee, and it's just like, bro, you know what I'm saying? And it's just like, now you're bringing this you're bringing in other elements that don't need to be there. And I just, like I said, I definitely think we need to keep it alive. We need to celebrate it, ourselves. We need to, in fact, I would say we should, if the federal government tries to make it a federal holiday, we should protest and say, we don't want your hand, you know what I'm saying? Because we know what they're going to do with it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because it's, well, I ain't going to say all that, but, like I said, the next thing you know, they're going to have some Lifetime movie about Malcolm X starring some, white guy or whatever, and then trying to, say that, all types of crazy stuff. So I definitely think that we need to do it because we're going to do it right. And don't let them try to change the narrative, because if given the opportunity, then that's exactly what they'll do.
I agree. I agree. Great point. And so this is an example, LMA, Brother LMA, I would argue of being an organic intellectual, right? So you may not be as well-read, but there's just some things I'll argue as an African that we know, right? just off GP that, hey, this is what's taking place and this is what they're trying to do and why they're trying to do it. And we don't need to read academic literature or peer-reviewed scholarly literature to know these things. So I would always argue that we should lean into our organic intellectualism.
But to that point, I definitely do need to start my own little book project and start reading up on a lot of stuff. I keep telling myself I'm going to do it, and then something always comes up. But I do need to. I got a couple of books that I'm trying to read up on. So, hopefully I'll be able to hang with you guys a lot harder next time.
No doubt. Okay. Any other thoughts? Mr. Sandman, snapshot reviews.
Yeah, I believe that Malcolm X's legacy needs to be remembered by us, mainly because if you look at the history of the African American in the United States, the one thing that mainly kept us back, especially when we were in bondage as slaves, was being denied education.
Okay.
So we weren't being allowed to learn how to read, things of that nature, because once we learned how to read, that will help give us freedom. So you take a civil rights leader like a Malcolm X, as opposed to one like a Martin Luther King, who grew up in a strong family structure, an educated family, with his father also being a reverend, an educated reverend, and him going to prestigious universities, as opposed to a guy who grew up in harsh circumstances like a Malcolm X, and to end up in prison and then to change his life around and become just as educated as Martin Luther King, who had a lot of things that were given to him. So as that's something that a lot of African Americans in this country could look up to, especially young ones who might not have access to everything that Martin Luther King had access to, but still could take the onus on themselves to become, educated on the history of themselves as African Americans, and becoming, very articulate and the masters of the English language, so that you can express yourselves in a way that can, induce others around you to follow your lead. So, more not just his rhetoric or his ideologies is a smart thing to follow, but his example of changing his life around could be very helpful for a lot of the African Americans in this country that might not be uh, doing the best, you know. So, and it's just interesting, the transformation that Harlem, New York, is going through over the decades. The Harlem Renaissance, used to be just a beacon or the mecca of African American culture in the United States, but over the years is going down, especially after the assassination of Malcolm X.
Right.
So I believe in the 80s they went through a really bad issue in regards to it turned it into a ghetto, and the drugs that were getting sold all over Harlem, New York, and then the gangs and the violence. But that should that needs to be resurrected too, and figures like a Malcolm X, who had a huge influence in Harlem, New York at the time of the civil rights, that need to be resurrected. The Harlem Renaissance with great inspirational African Americans in New York, Harlem, New York City, doing great things like we used to.
Absolutely. Snapshot, any thoughts?
I think Mr. Sandman just made some really good points, especially when he spoke about comparing the intellect of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. And one of the things that I took away from the book is a lot of Malcolm's intelligence really expanded by just him going out and talking to people. Like, he would go to the universities. Obviously, he was world traveled towards the end of his life, but he was always outside, to use the cool kids term, but he was always out, like really in the thick of it, and every sort of interaction seemed to sort of broaden his intelligence, give him different perspectives and things like that. And I think sometimes, and I even see it here myself, because like some of my cousins won't leave like where we live, like our area, like, do you know what I mean? Like, but there's a world out there, and you're gonna meet more people, and you're gonna have your points of views changed or challenged and stuff like that. And just this understanding of like steel sharpens steel in that sort of way, and things like that. And I just think that's one thing that we can kind of take with us. Really. I see that. Go on. What are you going to
No. I think that's a good point. One of the arguments I make, because I've read Dr. King's autobiography, I actually have it right behind me here. Here we go. In Malcolm X's autobiography, is that you see that Malcolm X was extremely politically mature, and I would argue that he surpassed. He lapped Brother Martin. We're not, of course, trying to make this a debate or a competition between the two, but I would argue that they weren't in the same tier.
Yeah,
absolutely. In terms of their understanding of the political apparatus of anti-blackness.
I've not read Martin Luther King's autobiography, but just understanding how staged a lot of the public appearances were for Martin Luther King and how controlled they were. And so even Malcolm talks about it, like some of the marches and things like that. They were told where to come, how to come, what signs to carry, right, all of that fun stuff. It's only natural his understanding is going to be somewhat hindered because he's got handlers. But like Malcolm didn't, so he was always going to get further down the line in that way.
Right. So something to consider. What are you all's thoughts on the Nation of Islam seeking to continue to misrepresent Malcolm's legacy and what he was about?
It's interesting you should say that, because a couple of months ago I heard Leo Muhammad, who's like, I guess he's the main Nation of Islam guy over here in Britain,
right,
saying that Malcolm was misled, or he was told things that weren't true and stuff like that. But I think I've heard you say it, like when it came down to the accusations of Elijah Muhammad and the girls that he got pregnant. If he's a Muslim, he's supposed to be allowed to have more than one wife. Why didn't he just make them his wife? And that would have put an end to the whole thing, wouldn't it?
Exactly.
But I don't know.
And real quick, brother, and this is one of the issues I have with the nation is that when they speak about this issue, they speak as if we don't actually have factual information about what took place and what transpired. Right? So it's almost even an air of chauvinism that they're saying, hey, Malcolm was misled. And of course, he was told things that weren't true. When the reality of the situation is Malcolm had saw these things himself, because Malcolm was really the only minister that was trusted enough to take large amounts of money, cash money, to the Nation of Islam headquarters and not keep some for himself. And he saw young women with their babies in hand banging on the door of Elijah Muhammad's Hyde Park mansion saying, you're going to help me take care of this baby. He saw this with his own eyes. He didn't ask his son Wallace, hey, what's going on here? And his son Wallace was like, yeah, this is what's going on. And members of the nation was upset by Wallace. Said, what is I supposed to do? Lie to him? He had seen it for himself. And Elijah Muhammad first said, okay, yeah, I understand this is a problem. But he continued to sleep with young women and then said, well, this has been prophesied that I must spread my seed.
Yeah, from that moment.
And the thing about it is in the Nation of Islam, the teaching is that you cannot fornicate. So you cannot engage in sexual relations of any kind unless you're married. So when young women became pregnant, he kicked them out the organization for fornicating and committing adultery, even though they were fornicating and committed adultery with him. So this is why Malcolm said this man is not divine. He's not even a religious person. He's a faker.
This is what goes back to what we were saying earlier, how dangerous it is when men worship other men. Like they will ignore shit that's right, sorry for swearing. They will ignore things that are right, blatant in their face. Yes. For the sake of thing. Now I can understand in certain parts of the book, Malcolm made it a point to not talk badly publicly about the Nation of Islam, because he could see that there was some good it had done for some people in terms of turning their lives around and stuff. But then it always gets to a point where there's just some things you can't ignore. But to answer your question earlier, when I was younger, my aunt would take me to some of these Nation of Islam meetings. I don't know why, but she did. And they always seem to talk from they're at the front of the class, as they're the fountain of all knowledge. They don't expect you to know anything else about what they're saying. Just listen and just accept it, sort of thing, which is interesting. But like, they're not over here, as far as I can see. They're not even really. No one talks about them. No one knows what they're doing. No one, like, I don't even know what they stand for now. Like,
Well, real quick, Hebrew Israelite says we can't protect his legacy. He was a sellout and a double agent. Do a thorough research. Found one. I would say I've done a copious amount of research on Malcolm X. But this is what I'll tell you. Tap in and be part of the conversation. I'm gonna put the link right below your comments in the chat. I want you to tap in and be part of the conversation. Don't just hide out in the chat, and be part of the conversation and share with us why you make the argument that Malcolm X was a sellout and a double agent. So once again, don't just make a claim in the chat. Come on to the live, be part of the conversation, and substantiate why you believe Hajj Malik El Shabazz, one of the greatest African Americans ever lived, one of the preeminent Pan-Africans of the 1960s, was a double agent, is a sellout. Go right ahead, snapshot reviews.
No, I was pretty much finished. Like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what it's like in America, but I don't know what their mission statement is. I don't know to what purpose do they exist, because I don't see them.
Right. Really. And Alexander Matthews says the nation would always show the strongest support in the community. From my perspective, the churches were the hardest ones to find support from, in my opinion. So tap in, be part of the conversation, Alexander. Once again, you don't have to use your real name. You can use a pseudonym when you don't have to cam up, but be part of the conversation. Let's unpack what you're talking about there. P-Funk 100, I'm with you 100%. I know, but I'm going to entertain for the sake of, as I say, that I'll allow diversity of thought to be part of the conversation here at Lamova Speaks. So yeah, Andrew Matthews, tap in, be part of the conversation. I've done work in the community, but like I said, I think there's a lot to unpack there in terms of what that support actually looks like, right? But once again, tap in, be part of the conversation. Mr. Sandman LMA, any thoughts on the claim that Malcolm was a sellout and a double agent?
Yeah, so the issue here is but in regards to your last question, I haven't really heard anything about him being a sellout or a double agent. But in regards to that rhetoric about the Nation of Islam, from my understanding, the members of the Nation of Islam do not worship Elijah Muhammad as God himself. However, they do believe that he's a messenger. So when you have this group of members in the Nation of Islam who are militant and disciplined in their ideology and their thought process, there's nothing that you could do to change their thought process and their belief in what the Nation of Islam is all about.
That's
So
correct.
by Malcolm X, disparaging the leader of the Nation of Islam or the messenger of the Nation of Islam, they're going to take a militant stance against that, and they're very militant, and they're willing to give their lives for what they believe in. So it's just a dangerous situation.
Yeah, it's very dangerous because what happens is you develop a cult-like situation, and typically in cults, what we find is individuals in cults. Factual information doesn't matter. It's all about what they believe.
Right.
And so that's where it becomes a problem. And so as a result, members of the nation were able to be manipulated into believing that Malcolm was somehow problematic. He was an apostate. So on and so forth. And then they was able to use that manipulation to cause individuals to go out with the actual protection of the FBI and assassinate him. Because we can't sit up here and have this conversation if we don't acknowledge the fact that the NOI worked in cahoots with the FBI to assassinate Malcolm X.
Right.
So this is substantiated, reputable sources. It's out there. I even have the plot to kill Malcolm X. There's a lot of literature that substantiates that was the case.
And there's also something to be said to the fact that a lot of the members of the Nation of Islam come from hard backgrounds like Malcolm X came from, and the Nation of Islam saved them from their own foolishness and folliness. So at the same time, even though Malcolm X did out the Elijah Muhammad for the wrongs that he did, it seems like he might have been a little bit ungrateful for what Elijah Muhammad did for him. Because without the Nation of Islam, he would still have been a hoodlum and a criminal running the streets, going back and forth to jail or dead.
Well, right? See, but I wouldn't call him a hypocrite, because here's the reality of the situation. When we talk about traditional African culture, everyone is held accountable and responsible. So if I was in an organization, like I've had individuals that helped me get to where I'm at today, and then I find out that they're doing something that's unbecoming, so what I'm supposed to do? Not say, just be cool with it because you helped me from being a Negro? No, that's the type of thing that we even see in the Black church, where the pastor has two side pieces and got a 16-year-old girl pregnant, but hey, he helped me out and brought me to Christ, so I ain't got a problem with it. No, everyone should be held accountable.
Yeah,
everyone.
Yeah, and that was the point I was gonna bring up. I was gonna wait for my turn, but yeah, I do give Malcolm X a lot of praise, because it takes a lot
of integrity.
Yeah, and it takes. And to what Mr. Sandman said. So if and to your point, if this guy is considered the leader of your institution, the leader that has enlightened you and brought you to knowledge, but if the dude's doing dirt, like you put him, not him, but Elijah put Malcolm X in that position, where now it's like, okay, do I keep my integrity or do I just let this thing fester? And that's, should be a lesson that any organization should listen to, because, think about Diddy. How many people were sitting around Diddy, saw him doing all of that stuff and said nothing. And now this thing blows up. And now everything that, this is just for Diddy's situation. Everything that he worked for has come crashing down. And so what if Diddy had been, the leader of, the NOI Part 2 or let's say Black Lives Matter, but let's say there's some other organization that's taken on the task of getting reparations for Black people, getting redress for Black people, and then he's doing some shit like this, and then now it's like, okay, damn, he's fighting for us, but he's also slapping Cassie upside the head. What am I supposed to do? You know what I'm saying? So no, I give Malcolm X all the praise because it takes a lot to stand up to, especially the institution that that gave you your calling. But at the same time, like, you're doing dirt. Like, I can't sit back and just let you mess around with these, especially girls. It's one thing if it was like 22-year-olds, 30-year-olds. He had 5 or 6 of them floating around, but he had teenagers. You know what I'm saying? And
highly impressionable young women. And your leader is taking advantage of them. You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry, LMA. Matter of fact, go right ahead. I apologize for cutting you off.
No. I like I said, it takes a lot, and that to me is a real leader, because that takes a lot of guts. And he paid for it with his life, because he basically put a crosshair on his back for girls, for some teenagers he didn't even know.
Do you think that the fact that a lot of the converts came via the prison route made them easier to be radicalized?
That's something. I'm not gonna put that behind them, but yeah,
it's easy to manipulate people who aren't critical thinkers, don't have a lot of education. I mean, this is just a reality.
Because even Malcolm himself was willing to bend over backwards to try and protect Elijah Muhammad's image until he got to the point where he couldn't.
There was even a time where the FBI met with Malcolm and they were trying to bribe him to get him to, speak ill of Elijah Muhammad and the nation, and he refused to do it. He even knew they was coming to where he had a digital recorder and put it underneath the couch and recorded the conversation. So this is even after he left the nation. He refused to work with the government to actually undermine the Nation of Islam and Elijah Muhammad. This man truly had integrity. In fact, when I read some of the FBI agents' files, they said that Malcolm X was like a monk compared to Martin Luther King in terms of his integrity, his discipline, his morals, etc.
Yeah, he was mission oriented. And I think that we need. That's a lesson that black people, but black men need to take from him. Like like I said, we all fellas here. We get it. Sometimes we all got our needs, we all got our urges. But for Malcolm X to be in that position, and then to what I'm saying, because a lot of cats, they're not going to do that because they're doing the same thing. You know what I'm saying? I can't hold
I'm doing
Yeah, exactly.
Not even just that, just how hard it is to go against the grain of what you think is the norm in your community, and to not be looked at as, I don't know, a pariah or something just because you didn't do what everyone else does and stuff like that. Like, you see a lot, especially a lot of young black guys, they get shamed for not doing what society expects them to be doing, even though they're not even that way naturally orientated, or do you know what I mean? It's it does take a lot of conviction. You're right.
Yeah, I just I wish both of them, of course, would have lived, but what I'm saying, I think that there was a commentator making kind of some snide remarks about Malcolm X, saying that a lot of black men he appealed to a lot of black men because of his past or whatever, and I think that he appealed to black men because he had that fight in him. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
and I think
he appealed to black men because of his integrity and his masculinity.
His masculinity and that fighting spirit. I'm not saying that what Martin Luther MLK was doing was not, what I'm saying, like, it didn't take guts to be able to stand up to and take all that stuff. But at the same time, it's like, come on, man, swing on it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I think that's what Malcolm X spoke to. But it was, like I said, it was a righteous anger. It was a controlled anger. It was a anger for justice, and what I'm saying. And he didn't back down, and like that was what what I'm saying. Like, and like you said, he brought that intellectual, rhetoric towards the fight, and it's just like you can't. What I'm saying? He like switched the framing around. And that's the one thing I liked about it, because when I first heard about it, I wasn't as enlightened as I am now. And when he brought it up, it was just like he just flipped it on me. I'm just like, damn, if I look at it the way I've been looking at it, then I'm gonna side with what I'm saying, oh, they're just troublemakers or whatever. But then when the same situation, I'm looking at the same picture, but then when I just flip my orientation, now I realize, oh, wait a minute, the people who I thought were the victims were actually the perpetrators. You know what I'm saying? So I like I said, I don't think that he's a traitor. I don't think that he's I think that Elijah Muhammad put him in a position. And that's to me, that is the true lesson that we need to learn, is to have integrity and not do stupid shit like that, because that is what kills organizations. That's what kills movements. Hell, there's another YouTuber who was, well, we're going to see what happened in the future, but the word is he got caught, disseminating nude photos of one of his ladies. So we'll see what happens with that. But like I said, that's movements die because of shit like that.
Yeah.
And now, you know what I'm saying? And all your credibility is gone, and like I said, we already got, especially for like black men, you know what I'm saying? We have the worst, don't get me wrong. We have the worst reputation. Not saying that we're the only men that do this type of stuff, but our image is trash. And it's just like the lessons that we need to take from, and that's the one thing about, Malcolm X. I think he just understood, I think he had the integrity, but it's just like he's like the image of him, you know what I'm saying? Because he wasn't out there in them streets. He was very disciplined. He spoke, he spoke truth to power. And it's just like, that's the lesson that black men need to learn. And, I'm afraid that lesson is not sinking in with a lot of males. Cause like I said, we're still getting led by we're still getting led by the wrong head, and
right.
It's a stupid issue to have. It's a stupid problem to have, but it is what it is.
I think another thing as well to build upon what Malcolm was doing is really to emphasize the importance of being able to be an independent person, because I think for all of the great stuff that Malcolm did, largely for a lot of his life, he was really depending on people patronizing like his trips or like funding him to be able to do X, Y, Z and stuff. And I think there needs to be some sort of level of independence that would allow an individual to be able to move with that level of fearlessness. Know that you've got some security around you. Do you know what I mean? You can't just be out there with no defense. If you know what I'm saying. Maybe I took it in a different direction, but I think that was just the only thing that I think was his shortcoming. I just think he just needed some sort of way of just being a bit more independent, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That's something Malcolm actually. You said you just read his autobiography, so I'm sure that's something you were able to cut that he talked about in his autobiography. Shelley Edwards has read his book in middle school and had my children do the same. Definitely changes the game when we know these things. Tap in, be part of the conversation. So to tap in, be part of the conversation. The other thing, when people talk about Malcolm and the Nation of Islam, Malcolm joined the Nation of Islam because the teachings of the Nation of Islam were similar to that of Marcus Garvey's Universal Negro Improvement Association. If you know anything about Malcolm's early life, Malcolm's parents were members of the UNIA. And in fact, Elijah Muhammad was a corporal on the UNIA chapter in Detroit, right? So there's a lot there, but also Malcolm was the one that was responsible for expanding the Nation of Islam, right, into the national organization that it had become, right? But I think the biggest issue, and Brother Snapshot Reviews talked about this, is that the nation still propagates misinformation about Malcolm. He was misled. He received false information. He didn't receive false information. He met with these women one-on-one themselves, and they shared these things with him.
Yeah, even the fact that they even acknowledge that the children were Elijah Muhammad's children, don't they?
Right.
So it just doesn't make sense that they could still defend it the way they do, but that's what they're going to do. It's their religion, isn't it?
Yeah. So and once again, it becomes it's insulting your intelligence, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Right. I had a brother tell me, well, we're Asiatic black man. I said, well, why the focus on Asia? He said, well, at one point, the whole world was called Asia. I said, well, that's not true. The term of Asia being attributed to a landmass wasn't until Herodotus in the 400 CE. 400. I said, what are you talking about here?
What does that term mean, Asiatic? What does that mean?
It's something they made up, but they're trying to say that black people are actually derived from Asia and not Africa.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm like, I was like, brother, I know much more. I said, we don't need to have a conversation about history because I'm gonna make you look bad.
Yeah, talk about that landmass between Africa and Asia, in like Southwest Asia. That's the landmass.
No. They make the argument that the entire what he stated was that because I know you're talking about the Sinai Peninsula, Arabian Peninsula. He said that the entire world at one point was called.
Oh, okay.
That's what he said. I'm like, that's completely false. Ahistorical.
Right.
There's no truth to that whatsoever. So once again, if you could then teach grown men and women these type of things and they believe it, what the French toast are we? These are individuals that are going to be able to be independent thinkers.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, typically, if you're going to manipulate somebody, what do? You sprinkle in some truth with some misinformation. And once they bite on that misinformation, you know you got them.
What do you think hooks them more particularly? Is it the Islam, the faith, or is it the, I don't want to call it propaganda, but is it the message of?
Well, I mean, the argument I would make in LMA, I hope you could tap in and answer this question as well, is, in my experience, they go out the individuals who are down in their luck. That's just a reality. Almost like a gang, people in prison. You go after individuals who are down in their luck, who are easy to manipulate, and as a result, you're then able to what? Have them, join the organization.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the one point I was going to bring on that, I do think, that's obviously, most, these types of organizations have that little predatory, looking for the person with the, on hard times. But I do think that, especially with, Black people in general, but just Black people in specific in America at that time frame, we're very religious people, right? And so I think there was always this kind of tension between, or just, this uneasiness of Black people being Christians, the same religion as their oppressors. So when you have a religion that comes and says, like, no, we are the Black man, and that's one thing I remember them saying, like, this is the Black man's religion. Islam is the Black man's religion, and that when we came over here, we were Muslim.
Which is ahistorical, because we know Islam was created by Arabs.
Yep.
Right. This is the reality. There's a virulent history of anti-Blackness in the Islamic faith from the inception of the religion.
Well,
right? And I've talked to members of the Nation of Islam. They say, well, Islam only became anti-Black when white people joined it. I said, no, I know the history. That's not the case whatsoever. There's a lot of misinformation. And real quick though, and I'm glad you brought this up, because Malcolm even said this when Malcolm left the nation. He said Elijah Muhammad was telling us things that were ahistorical, that weren't true, and we believed him because we didn't know any better.
Yeah, and the one thing I wanted to say, and like, let me just get this point off real quick. And I wish that Malcolm X was here, because I think that Malcolm X would eventually moved away from Islam, because I think because he probably didn't know about the Islamic African slave trade. You know what I'm saying?
He was aware.
Yeah, but I think after a while of that sitting on his spirit, I think he probably would have eventually had to make some type of do something about that cognitive dissonance. Because, like I said, if you're rejecting Christianity because of the transatlantic slave trade, then you have to reject Islam because of the Arab slave trade.
Right.
Yeah, you have to.
Absolutely.
And I think he would have eventually got to that point. But it takes people to think about that long enough to get to that point.
The thing is,
and very quickly, family, this is a book by William A. Sales Jr. on Malcolm X and the Organization of African American Unity. In this book, they talk about, there was a conversation Malcolm had with a brother from Zambia who was a doctoral student writing his dissertation. Snapshot reviews, you've already done that. I'm doing that now. And his dissertation was on the adverse effect that Islam and the trans-Arab slave trade, trans-Saharan slave trade had on African nations, societies, and cultures. And Malcolm said, oh, we should just focus on the European slave trade. And the brother was telling Malcolm, no, this has had just as bad a effect on us, or even worse. In fact, many scholars argue that the whole concept of chattel enslavement was something that was created by Arab Muslims in regarding the enslavement of African people. And this is something that they taught Europeans, right? And as a result, Europeans then went and perfected that concept of dehumanizing the individual completely based on their race. But we do know that anti-Blackness was something that Arab Muslims taught the Europeans during the Middle Ages.
You see, this thing about Islam being the Black man's true religion is what they believe. And they say things like the white man is the devil. But the truth is, the Prophet Muhammad was actually a white guy, wasn't he?
Well, I mean, he was Arabic. He was Arab. And one of the things is Prophet Muhammad had a black slave, Bilal, the first caller of prayer.
Oh.
Right. I mean, and Prophet Muhammad, and this is in the Hadith. I had the Hadith behind me, so it's not like I'm talking out of my derriere.
Yeah.
Prophet Muhammad made negative comments about black people in the Hadith. So it's like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and I always tell people, Abrahamic faiths. I did a show on this probably about 2 weeks ago. You all can check it out. Abrahamic faiths in general are anti-black. Judaism falsifies African history, right? Omits African history, claims that Abraham was the first person to believe in one God, which isn't the case whatsoever. That's ahistorical. We even find in the Bible, Moses was repudiated by his people for marrying a black woman. This is the book of Numbers. Right. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what it is about Abrahamic faiths, but they have a long history. In fact, even the Jewish, it's a Jewish, I can't remember the actual term, the name of the book, but in the 5th century, the Jewish scholars began to, say it again, brother?
The Torah?
No, not the Torah. Something else called the Jewish. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. 5th century Jewish.
Do Hebrew Israelites acknowledge that?
No, they don't. Well, most Hebrew Israelites don't even know the history of Judaism themselves or the history of Jewish people. So, but in the 5th century, they began to propagate in their literature that the black people were the descendants of the curse of Ham. Right. So this is in the 5th century. So like I said, there's a long history of anti-blackness in Abrahamic faiths, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. So anyone who would make the claim that this is the black man's true religion doesn't know, one, African history, they don't know world history, and they don't know the history of the very religion that they are a believer and practitioner of.
Yeah. Wow.
That's just the reality. And that's why you can get people to actually believe in these things, because they don't actually know the history of the religion. That all they know is the narrative that they were taught at the synagogue, the Quranic school, or Sunday school.
Yeah. And I think that at the time, like I said, because, America was a Christian nation, and black people were kind of looking for an identity that was, you come along with this identity that's separate. And at some, then you got somewhere you can, direct your hostilities, you know what I'm saying? Because you can't, there has to be some type of cognitive dissonance. You're praying to the same God as your oppressor. Like there has to be some type of, there's going to be some type of cognitive dissonance. And so when Islam comes along and gives you that out, people are going to take it. And, like I said, you may not have, and I do give people of that time frame a better, I give them context. Cause like I said, they didn't have the internet. They did not have the internet like we have it now. You know what I'm saying? So I can easily look this stuff up, cross-reference it, and then get different ideas.
And Black studies didn't exist at that time.
Exactly.
Black studies didn't come around until the late 50s and 60s. So it's not like we had a lot of scholars who were able even to produce this information from doing research and so on and so forth.
Exactly.
And the thing is, a lot of this information, like the credible stuff, is so hard to find, or books are like out of print or stuff like that. And I think there's a project there to be done about like just trying to get like the right information in one place that people can just like help them with their like research. You know what I mean? Like, otherwise they're just going to be out there following any old foolishness, man.
And that's typically what happens. So when I've been part of organizations, I even helped create a founder organization. And one of the things that we pushed was, of course, scholarship, being intellectually curious, not intellectually indolent. And so I would have them read peer-reviewed articles, books, etc. Like you need to actually learn actual African history, actual Black history, not a master narrative that someone is giving you. You need to learn how to be critical of information, how to question information, right, etc. Right? Is this peer reviewed? What is this from a reputable source? Right? What is this person's credentials? Right? And so these are things that we have to be cognizant of. Because, matter of fact, even the Nation of Islam, one of Elijah Muhammad's books, I don't believe it's Message to the Black Man, but there's another book he wrote where he talked about, I think it's Fall of America, where he states that the only civilized people in Africa are Christians and Muslims, and that why would we want to embrace a jungle culture? So we even see anti-African views in the Nation of Islam's teachings.
Who said that?
Elijah Muhammad.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in his books.
Flipping hell.
Yeah.
In terms of Nation of Islam in America, are they an organization that seem to be growing in size, or are they just like?
I would argue it depends on. So the Nation of Islam, they have either a study group or a mosque in various cities, and it really depends on the leadership of that in that local city if they're expanding or not.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, there's a great book on it. A great book on the nation titled by Verbert L. White Jr. Inside the Nation of Islam. Right, and this is a great book. Bell Blow. Okay, you can turn your camera off, brother, and I'm gonna bring you in alive. Where he talks about some of the issues in the nation, right? So, but we don't want to get too off topic here because, of course, we're talking about Malcolm here. But Bell, how do I pronounce your name, brother?
Bleebo, bro.
Bleebo. Okay. What do you got for me?
It's on topic, but you're getting your doctorate or PhD, right?
Yes, sir.
In history?
My doctorate is in higher education student affairs with a cognate in African American perspectives.
Okay, man. Every time I meet a guy like you or talk to someone online like you, this is the first thing I ask. We need to do something like what Jews did on the banks of the Euphrates and get our history down, bro. We are confused out here, and I like the fact that y'all doing this to give people more information on Malcolm and his life and the situation between Elijah and himself. That was you give your life to a man, then you find out that the man, and now it's not just the women. Remember, his wife was telling him they want him out because of, remember, she was looking around the house and said, hey, man, we ain't got what they got. They got Cadillacs and furs, diamond rings. You know what I'm saying? They flossing. And Malcolm was getting perturbed because he questioned me cats about that. So that was the first nail in the coffin. And then they turned Elijah against him. And once you do that to a person who looked at this guy as a person who raised him from the gutter, God, I mean, and then they go after him, call him his house, tell him he gonna kick him out of the house. You probably would tell it on him. You probably would say something. I got a little more pride than that. To go through all that was something remarkable at the same time scary because he knew what was gonna happen to him.
Right. I think a week before he was assassinated, he was on a TV program and he said, it's time for martyrs now. So he knew that he was going to be assassinated.
Yeah, he said on one of those talk shows, I can't forget the guy, I saw the video, and he said that he was practically a dead man.
Yes, he did. Yeah, he said, I'm a dead man walking. He already knew that.
Yeah, but brother, if you just I just want to give you this. I want someone to start. I'm trying to start, but I'm not that astute in history. But I would like to see one of you young guys to start a movement to get the history, not what we feel, not what we believe, but history. Mm-hmm. Get our history down.
There's a brother that's already doing that. And what I'm going to do, there's a brother who's already doing that. He's based out of Minneapolis, the Twin Cities. His name is Jabril Africa. I'm going to put his I'm gonna put the link to his Instagram in the chat.
All right, cool.
Yeah, and this is good that you came on, that you asked this question, because hey, this is information you want to receive. And I'm gonna actually bring him up. And let me share my screen so you can see it, and you can actually contact him on Instagram. Let him know I led him your way.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so Jabril Africa, RBG Nationalist is his name on Instagram. Pan-Africanist organizer. But that, of course, is the brother who has a book club where they focus on Black people learning the actual history, right? Not pseudo history, like you said, not how we feel, not conjecture, not innuendo, but actual Black history. He works, of course, with brother Dwayne Omawale, who, of course, is a Pan-African social Pan-African historian. He's written 29 books on African history and the history of African people in the Caribbean. He's written 29 books once again. And so they are the ones who are actually part of that study group that they developed and created for individuals who want to come and learn actual history. They're not romanticizing history, but learning actual African history from antiquity to, of course, the modern era.
Yes, yeah, and I also want to see that move to where we publishing something to distribute to our people.
Absolutely. Yes, I just put the name
something
in the
they
chat
have,
once again.
something they have in their home, like a Bible. Or someone
Well, I would argue that there's a lot of literature on the history of our on a reputable books I got behind me, right? So, so there's a lot. There's a lot of, excuse me, LMA. I see you trying to tap in. So just once you come in, brother, I'll let you in. So there's a lot of information there. But I would agree with you, brother, that part of the issue is you want to make sure that if you want to take the time to read. Of course, you want to make sure that the information you're reading is coming from a reputable source, because you don't want to waste your time reading nonsense. I understand when it comes from direct.
Because it's vetted by many people like you who saying, okay, we're not going to put, like for instance, when you want to talk about Elijah Muhammad and all the stuff you just mentioned, that Asia, you have to put in perspective. Your history book would tell you that's in your home. When somebody else write about it, you say, okay, this is the scholars that we deal with. They published a book that we have a reference. We need something that we reference.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because you gotta understand, most people don't read no more. One, and if you make it digital, you still don't get a lot of people that read. But you still need to have that available for our people. When something like what's going on in Florida. Right now, Florida trying to change. They don't want their kids to know that their ancestors did some horrible shit. So they want to change and omit shit. So what we have to do is have it for ourselves, like Jews do with their history. They don't care if nobody take their stuff out to schools. They're gonna do it anyway.
Right, because they have their own institution. So very quickly, just because you mentioned digital, I have a platform on Medium. I write on Medium frequently. I frequently write on Medium. So I put the link to, of course, my Medium account in the chat, and of course you could click on it and just follow me on Medium, and therefore when I publish, you of course can read the articles that I write. So the link to my Medium account is in the chat, family. Okay, cool. That's cool. Yeah, because I first saw you on Dinah Show. So okay, very good, very good, very good. All right, brother. I'm gonna go back to cooking. Okay, very good, very good. Happy Malcolm X Day. LMA, what's the word? I think you were trying to say something before you had.
I was having some connection issues with my Wi-Fi, so I pretty much lost. I didn't hear like the last probably maybe 10 minutes of whatever you guys were talking about. So whatever the topic was,
Yeah, so the brother was just talking about, the importance of course, us reading, but also being able to make sure we're reading reputable sources of scholarly information. And so it really was just veggie back, on what the claim that you were making about part of the issue was, we have to put in context why people would believe in these things, is because there wasn't information out there about our history and culture and so on and so forth.
I really do think there needs to be a project that pulls together this sort of stuff, and I think you're the man to lead it, Lumumba.
Well, but I got a lot on my plate right now. Let me say this.
But you don't have to do it.
I think it's important that we don't reinvent the wheel, right? So two texts, right? One, this is the Encyclopedia Africana. The Encyclopedia Africana was the brainchild of Kwame Nkrumah and W.E.B. Du Bois. So when we talk about having an encyclopedia of African history, African culture, the Encyclopedia Africana already exists.
Okay.
Right. So this is the condensed version. You can go online and get the version where there's like 6 books, right? The second is that you're talking about particularly African American culture. We have the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, of course, after Arthur Schomburg, the Afro-Puerto Rican bibliophile, who is a member of Marcus Garvey's UNIA. And this is the African American Desk Reference, the ultimate source of essential information about history, culture, and contemporary life, in the African American community. So the information is already there.
Yeah.
What you're asking for already exists.
Yeah, but the thing is, I'm not saying like create the information, but like these books that you've just shown up here, I wouldn't have known that they existed unless you've just shown it to me. So even if it's just something like a simple web page with a list of books to just suggest people to just go off and read, and you could probably even put like an affiliate link on there or something, helps to fund your own work when someone buys a book or something. But I just think someone like you that's got a platform and done a lot of thinking around this, and I'd be happy to support you in any way I can, like for it and stuff. I just think something like that needs to be done. And just the last thing I'll say before I go, because I've got work in the morning, so I have to go to sleep.
Yes, sir.
But in terms of like taking Malcolm's work forward, there is a question that he brings up in the book where he was talking about Pan-Africanism, and he says we need to develop a working unity in the framework of Pan-Africanism. And it sounds very interesting, but I don't actually know what that means or how we might go about it. And that might be a topic for another show.
Well, yeah, it is a topic, and I think we could do that because he gives that framework. Hey, brother, you cooking with fish grease today. That's why you got to come on more. But also, you told me I need to do the show.
It's a time zone. Yeah.
He talks about, he gives that framework in the charter of the Organization of African American Unity.
Oh, okay.
So what we need to do, matter of fact, put your email in the chat and I will email you the charter to the Organization of African American Unity. So put your email in the chat and I will email it to you like ASAP.
All right. That's the private chat, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, then I'm going to shoot off after that, but have a good show the rest of it.
Okay. Appreciate it. LMA, what's the word, brother?
Yeah, man, not much. Yeah, I can definitely agree with was it snapshots. Yeah, I mean, something like that. I mean, like I said, we definitely need to make sure that our information is here because, like I said, we don't want to allow other people to be able to create the narrative around our heroes.
Right.
Because, like I said, next thing you're gonna know, Malcolm X was a integrationist who was, all about, the greatness of all of us coming together, and that he didn't want, what I'm saying. So we have to make sure that doesn't happen because, like I said, it happened kind of with Martin Luther King, and that was, for a long time, a lot of people just, he was a radical. He was, but he, he was the more, how can I put it? I don't want to call him an integrationist. I mean, he was an integrationist. I mean, he was, but I didn't want to be like reductive in that sense. But it was just more or less like he was the, not pragmatic, but the almost like the diplomatic. You know what I'm saying? Where just like you're trying your best to get your point. Like say you're dealing with someone who's hostile to you. You're trying to be professional. You're not trying to like, how can I put it? It's almost like someone's in like Congress or whatever, and you got someone who's trying to be go by the rules and all this other shit, and then you get like a Crockett where just like you send something at me, you say some slick shit to me, then I'm gonna call you a bad built butch body, whatever she called that woman. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So,
I've been seeing that going around. Where does that come from?
So basically, it was in Congress. What's her name? Marjorie Taylor Greene has said some slick shit to Crockett. I can't think of her first name. Crockett. She's one of the representatives. And Marjorie Taylor Greene said something about, can't you read it? I guess you can't see it behind those fake eyelashes. Something about her eyelashes. And then it was just like you basically insulted the way she looked in a public, official setting. And then the rest of the system was just like, okay, not almost like a slap on the wrist, but it was just like they really didn't sanction her. They didn't really do anything to her. They didn't censor her or nothing. And then when Crockett came back and called her a bad built butch body or something like that, saying, basically say, she's shaped like a damn sack of potatoes. And then, chaos, ensued or whatever. But it was just like that fighting spirit that Crockett had, where just like, we're not trying to be like Michelle Obama. Sometimes you gotta be like Michelle Obama, sometimes you gotta be like Crockett. You know what I'm saying? And I think that, but if the only person that, even if in that dichotomy, you know what I'm saying? Don't get me wrong, I got my issues with Michelle Obama, I got my issues with Crockett, but that dichotomy between the two, if you're only presented Michelle Obama, you know what I'm saying? And you just got to take it and then try to be all professional no matter what, you know what I'm saying? But you're never, given Crockett, you know what I'm saying? you know, you're just gonna have this frustration. You're not gonna have a complete option of voices that you can take from. I'm not saying that you can't take from MLK, and I'm not saying you should only take from Malcolm X, but you need you need both. You need all of the voices of Black empowerment, Black improvement, pro-Black, Afro. So you need all of the voices so that you can put them together. You can't just have.
And that's the benefit of being able to think for yourself. You're able to do that. You're able to amalgamate the different ideas, philosophies, and views of all of these great leaders and organizations, and then synthesize that for your own personal empowerment, the empowerment of your family, community, so on and so forth.
No, I agree.
Yeah, so I'm with you 100%. Yeah, but I would just ask that question because maybe I need to look it up. Maybe afterwards I'll go on YouTube and see where this is.
It's kind of funny because her snapback was pretty funny. I ain't gonna lie. This is one for the books. It's almost like I can't think of yeah, she kind of messed it up in the end because she dropped the S bomb. She said shit. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, she was doing so well, and then she dropped it, and I was like, damn, because it was a comeback. You know what I'm saying? Marjorie Taylor Greene was like, talking spicy, being reckless in the mouth. You know what I'm saying? And just like, yo, you can't talk to her like that. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't like the fact that she lost her the witty comeback was fine, but when she started dropping curse words, that's when, in my opinion, not that she didn't lose, but you gotta curse them out without using curse words.
We know when you play the dozens, you have to keep your composure in order to win.
Yeah. So that's where she didn't lose me. I'm with her, but it was just like, damn, like if you could have pulled that off without cursing, you would have been
without the F bombs, right?
Yeah. It was It was funny. You should look it up, man. It was good. It was good. Yeah. But no, I'm with you on that one.
Okay, 100%. Well, yeah, I appreciate you all tapping in, being part of the conversations. We discussed why we must protect the legacy of Malcolm X. I think one aspect of this is we know individuals who intrepidly resist anti-Blackness are typically viewed negatively. They were repudiated in the media, the dominant media. Malcolm was known to say the media is very powerful because they would have the guilty look innocent and the innocent to look guilty. And so I think that's another issue, is that when we're defending Malcolm, we also are defending the legacy of African people engaging in the audacious of the Black radical tradition of audacious self-assertion. So I think that's also an issue as well, because if you think about individuals like the one of Marcus Garvey, of course Malcolm X. We talk about one Martin Delany, the Ida B. Wells of the world, the Gloria Richardsons of the world, the September P. Clarks, the Ella Jo Bakers, etc. Those of us who have, of course, aligned ourselves with this Black nationalist, Pan-Africanist type of worldview typically are repudiated in the media or not spoken of at all.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, and of course, in defending the legacy of Malcolm X, protecting the legacy of Malcolm X, we also are protecting the legacy of the Black radical tradition of audacious self-assertion that rejected the slaveocracy, right? Rejected the notion of inveterate and congenial Black dehumanization, global debasement, right? And said that, no, we are not meant to be enslaved. We are not animals and beasts of burden. We are human beings, and we are going to audaciously assert our right to be viewed and treated as human beings in this world. And we know that many scholars argue that the origins of that belief, that Pan-Africanist belief in audacious self-assertion, originated via the success of the Haitian Revolution. So now I feel like I'm about to start preaching, right? But so I to me, this is very important. It's near and dear to my heart. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a Pan-Africanist to the core. I have Pan-Africanism tattooed across my back. I have a red, black, and green tattoo sleeve. I live my life that way. It's what I believe in 100%. And so I think it's important that we also understand that in defending Malcolm's legacy, right? We're also defending Pan-Africanism and, of course, the Black radical tradition of audacious self-assertion. Yeah. And flamboyant rejection. Also, we talk about Marcus Garvey and his flamboyant rejection of whiteness, right? So that's another aspect as well. When we talk about Black power, we talk about Black radicalism. There also is a push to do what? Also make sure that we are reasserting an African-centered perspective of beauty, of culture, of linguistics, etc. In fact, I went to a Nation of Islam meeting, and the brother was saying, well, yeah, and we're the only people in the world that don't even speak our own language well. We speak English, but we really be speaking Ebonics. I'm thinking, no. The reason why we speak Ebonics is the same reason why brothers in Jamaica speak Patois, and why brothers and sisters in Haiti speak Haitian Creole, because it's not our native tongue. Right. So you see the misinformation that they're pushing, that they're promoting. But that's why we want to make sure that the work that we're doing, we bring scholarship to it as well, not just rhetoric, not just hyperbole, right? But scholarship. We want to make sure our people are learning actual factual information so that when they go out into the world and they're challenged, they can stand on that. And it isn't just a belief or what someone told them, but facts. In fact, when I had my the organization I co-created with a number of brothers and sisters, our orientation packet was about 30 pages, right? And it gave the history of Black integrationist thought, Black conservative thought, and of course, Black nationalist Pan-Africanist thought. We didn't tell people what to believe in. We said, just read the orientation packet, come back to us, and let us know where you see yourself aligning, right? Because our true education doesn't tell you what to think. They don't control the information. They give you all the information, allow you to make a decision. I hope you agree with that.
Yeah.
And so one of the sisters came back and said, yeah, you know, I appreciate this, but why didn't you all just tell us da-da-da-da-da? I said, well, we just told you what to believe or only provide a snippet of information. We're not actually trying to help you. We're trying to control you in your thinking, right? We're not into that. So, but one of the things we promoted, of course, in the organization was not only professional development, but also becoming people who are intellectually attuned, right? And many would argue that this is something that is not germane to our culture, our historical personality. I would disagree. We know that we look at the Songhai Empire. We know that there was a culture of intellectualism in the Songhai Empire, so much so that the book trade in Timbuktu was more lucrative than the gold trade.
Yeah.
Right. So this is part of who we are in terms of being our true African selves. So but I appreciate everyone tapping in. Once again, family, the link is in the chat. The link is in the description. Tap in and be part of the conversation. If not, we're going to close out, but I'll give you final words for the LMA.
No. Like I said, it's I think it was a great discussion. Like I said, happy X Day to everyone. And I think that we definitely need to make sure that we don't allow others to co-opt his legacy.
Absolutely. I would argue that one of the things that we could take from the legacy of Malcolm X is integrity. Be a man of principle. Be a man of integrity, right? And that's something, and we know Malcolm's life is an example of this. When you are a person of principle, when you are a person who has integrity, you aren't going to be liked by many. There are going to be people who are going to dislike you, but you should be able to, of course, live with yourself. And I think that's something that is very important. Being a person, being a man of principle, being an African, right? Because we don't want to exclude our sisters, of principle and integrity. And so what we meaning, we don't want our value system to be whatever's convenient.
Exactly.
Right? We want our value system to actually be rooted in something that is truly in the benefit of our people on the continent and throughout the diaspora.
Exactly. I got a question for you. Well, how do you think Malcolm X would fared? Make sure I form this question right. How do you think he would have fared today? Like if he would have lived and just counter history, counterfactual, like if he would have lived, what do you think? How do you think things would have turned out?
Yeah, I think if Malcolm would have been able to have had the privilege of making it into older age, becoming an elder, I think he would have been revered the same way Du Bois was revered. Right? I think Du Bois lived to be 95. I think when he was in his 90s, he moved to Ghana, right, and became a guest of course, the first president of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah. I think Malcolm may have at some point moved to the continent, right? But I think he would have been revered as an elder. I think individuals who were leaders in the community, activists in the community, would have sought him out, sought his opinion on particular issues. I think, and this is just me, of course, maybe romanticizing it because I view him in such high esteem, that he still would have been a voice that people wanted to hear regarding the issues that were taking place in the community.
Yeah.
And so I think, I think the greatest example for me would be that of Du Bois, because Du Bois lived to be 95.
Yeah. Wow. like I said, sometimes you got to put it all out down the line, and he did that for, he
Yes,
did
sir.
that for what
And so
his cause.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
I can matter of fact, I remember maybe is this maybe 15 years ago. This back when my son was like 5. No, not 15 years ago. Yeah, 2009. No, he wasn't 5 years old. I'm sorry, 2013. So he was 9 years ago. He was 5. Yeah, I'm like, he ain't 20 years old, right? So it was Malcolm X Day, and I remember like he was outside playing, came in the house, took a shower, and then came downstairs in a kente cloth outfit. So I'm like, well, why you got the kente cloth outfit on, son? He said it's Malcolm X Day, and I wanted to celebrate Malcolm X Day.
That's dope.
Yeah, I remember I took a pictures on my Facebook where he was in the kente cloth outfit. He was just so proud. But the fact that even as a young child, he associated Afrocentrism, pride in one's heritage, with Malcolm X, which is just a beautiful thing. And like I said, my son was 5 years old. He didn't know the history of Malcolm being a criminal, but the fact that Malcolm was a masculine, principled man, right, who was African-centered, of course, and rooted in the policies of Pan-Africanism. My son just thought the world of him, probably in part because I thought the world of him. But yeah, it's something that attracts young men. And I would even argue something that attracts young women, because I've had a number of women share with me, they don't like seeing our man acting in milk toast manner, as if they have a jellyfish type of a spine.
Yeah.
Right. So Malcolm, as Ozzie Davis stated in his eulogy, which of course I posted on my channel today, he said when he was our shining black prince, he was our black manhood. Right.
Yeah,
and so I believe that in terms of an example of black masculinity, that is a healthy example, a positive example, a liberating example, a revolutionary example of black masculinity, is none other than Malcolm X himself, Hajj Malik El Shabazz. And the thing about it was that he was always willing to learn.
Yeah.
Always willing to learn. He said that he was a voracious reader. He said he wished he could live his life in a library.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's so many lessons that we could take from Malcolm, right? The type of devoted husband, father that he was. When his daughters, the ones that, of course, were old enough to remember him, talking about how nurturing and loving and how he pushed them to be educated, right? I mean, and think about some of the names he gave his daughters, African names. So this brother truly was the greatest of us all, the greatest amongst us.
Yeah. And this is my last statement. The one thing I do remember was like the fact that, he really tried to, in a sense, bring up the manhood of the black men around him. I remember that one picture of him with the chalkboard talking about man, how he has to become a father, how he has to be a teacher and all this other stuff. And like, he was like really trying to galvanize the black men to kind of embrace a certain type of masculinity that was community oriented and like protected women, and you kind of see like the pitfalls of, basically going back to what I was saying before, where you just have people who are leaders, but then they have these certain character flaws that really can end up taking over the entire, destroying the entire movement. I think about like the Black Panthers, because a lot of the Black Panthers, that energy, that fight came from Malcolm X, but they didn't take his masculinity about protecting women and respecting women. And you hear all the I ain't gonna say horror stories, but you hear all the complaints about the women in the Black Panthers movement, and it's just like,
how they were treated. We're talking about oftentimes systematic sexual assault of women in the Black Panther Party.
And it's just like,
right, so the lack of moral discipline. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, brother. I mean, I think we wouldn't call it a horror story, because I think if we experienced that, it would be a horror story. So,
and I just, like I said, it's just, it's kind of sad. Like I said, sometimes just the wrong lessons learned from Malcolm. I mean, not the wrong lessons, but sometimes you miss certain lessons in Malcolm X. Because I think that had, that aspect, yes, there's always the fight, the power part of, everyone likes that part, the fighting and the, everyone likes it, but the discipline part was the part, the integrity part, you know what I'm saying? So like I said, and I think that the Black Panthers would have been able to get a lot farther had they not had that, like I said, we're all guys, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes you got a little bit of locker room talk, but you got to understand that like when the women come around, they got to be respected, they got to feel protected, they got to feel,
you got to
clean that up. Yeah, like, you know what I'm saying? I'll never, like I said, people always going to talk crazy, in the locker room, but like I said, you got to have you got to put on, I ain't gonna say put on the face, but you got to make sure that the women feel protected around you. And I think that that was like, I really, really appreciate it, because you don't see that with a lot of guys. Even now, you see a lot of guys, they may give, lip service, but they don't really give a honest, it's not from their core. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, part of being a man is protecting the women. And I think, just a lot of the organizations that, a lot of people that got Malcolm X tattooed on their body didn't carry that part forward.
Right. And two things. The way my son and I would talk in a room is different when my daughter walks in. Mm-hmm. Right. The second issue is protecting isn't just being a dog on a leash and engaging in physical violence to protect. Part of protecting is actively preventing problems from even taking place.
Of course.
Right. One thing I learned when I was in the military was what the best maintenance is preventative maintenance.
Yep.
So part of the work that we do in protecting loved ones, family members, women, children, is to prevent them from being in situations that are detrimental to their existence.
Exactly.
Yeah. So peace, family. I appreciate you all tapping in. Until next time, y'all know what to do. Always bet on black. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share. Hit the notification bell. You were watching a dual stream with Bakari Lumumba, the progenitor of LumumbaSpeaks.com, a black empowerment initiative where we believe we can gain a competitive advantage by always betting on black. And of course, Bequaline Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire. Until next time, you all know what to do. Peace.